all-in-one business tools, are they the best thing for your business, or are they the worst thing for your business? Or is it somewhere in between? We're talking about one of them today. It's called Flowtrack. So stick around. Hi there, it's Kelly, your tech-savvy business mentor here. Flowtrack is a tool that I actually evaluated a little bit over a year ago when one of my clients was curious about it. She reached out, she asked me what I thought of it, and so I did some research and ended up writing a blog post about it. And I was so surprised to see how many people were curious about this tool. And I think a lot of it had to do with the deal they were offering at the time. And I think too, there's a level of this expectation that if we use a tool that claims to do everything for our business, that it's easier, it's more convenient, therefore it must be the best option. One of the things that we talk about here on the channel is that there is really no right or wrong answer when it comes to choosing the tools for your business. Everybody's going to have a different need. Everyone's going to have different preferences. So it's really, really important that you take the time to evaluate. And if you are not sure or don't know how to evaluate, then you reach out to someone like me who can do that for you, who's got the experience working in multiple tools and can kind of give you an expert opinion on it. So like I said, about a little over a year ago, I did that with this tool, Flowtrack. I had a few things to say about it as far as like the pros and cons, and you can actually check out the blog post here if you want to go read that for yourself. But I made a couple of comments about the way that their pricing structure worked and things like that. And ultimately for me, spoiler alert, I thought that it was not quite ready to be a tool that I would be willing to put any kind of money into. And something that I would recommend specifically for a client of mine. However, about a year after I posted that review, I actually got an email from the founder of Flowtrack letting me know that he appreciated my review, that he had, addressed some of the things that I had mentioned. I guess I wasn't the only person making those comments. So he addressed some of the things with the pricing plan and everything like that. And he asked me to check it out to see the changes that he'd made, and in the hopes that there would be a new review that I would release. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to dive back into the new free trial that he sent me so that I can kind of look around, get a feel for what changes they have made, and let you know what I think. So why don't we just dive right into the tool? All right, so one of the things that I like about this right out of the gate is that it's they have a 2-week free trial, which is sufficient for getting a chance to play around with things and trying a bunch of things, which is really cool. And it's also a no credit card free trial, which is even better because you don't have to worry about like forgetting to cancel it on time or things like that. You can just kind of dive in and play around. I'm also loving, as like silly as this is, I'm all about aesthetics. And I like that they have the option to go light or dark because I'm a big fan of having the dark screen. It's just easier on the eyes for me when I'm in tools like this for a really long time. So you can see right here that we have the ability to customize and personalize the back end for ourselves and be able to see our own logo here, which is kind of a nice feature. We've got chat here, which looks like there's a built-in way to chat with your customers through your website, which is kind of cool. We've got a calendar, which it looks like we can sync with our Google Calendar or with Office 365. That's cool too. Contacts. So the contacts part of this would be mostly used for like email automation, but also for the CRM features here. And CRM is what's called a customer relationship manager. And basically it's a way to not only track your relationship and communication with potential customers and existing customers, but also to manage and track opportunities to sell and sales that you've made. So that's something that is here in Flowtrack that not all tools have. So we've got pipelines, and this looks pretty cool, actually. If you saw last week's video where we were talking about Trello, this might look familiar to you. And this is kind of in this card layout format, or it's also called Kanban layout format. It allows you to create specific cards that are where you would put in your information about this particular task, and then you can move it through the process as things are done. And you can see here, like, this is also related to the sales pipeline and the CRM, because you can see they've got some roll-up features here, which is really cool. So you're able to see the value of the cards that are in that particular list. That's a pretty cool feature. We've got automations here, template inbound call flow, template sign up flow. We'll come back to this because I'm curious to see how complicated it is to set up automations in this system. So we'll definitely come back to this. And then we've got websites, and it looks like you can actually create a whole website within Flowtrack, which is pretty cool. I don't know exactly how that works, but if you're somebody that, you know, really just wants to learn how to use one particular tool and be able to do a lot of different functionality, that's one of the benefits of something like this, having this kind of all-in-one kind of platform. Typically, though, when you go into a system like this where you're focused on the convenience of knowing how to do everything, you tend to lose out on some of the flexibility in how you can customize and personalize your sites and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that works with this. Okay, so tracking, it looks like what this is letting you see basically your lead sources, like where people are coming from and how their customer journey is going through your system. They've got phone here. So this is something that I don't know, a lot of us don't really use phone in our business anymore because we've got things like Zoom, or we just meet up in person, or we work more in like a text type environment. But they do have VoIP services where you can tie a phone number to your account and stuff like that. But I do believe that they have like you have to buy minutes in here, the way those of us who remember having to purchase minutes on a cell phone plan or something like that, it is similar to that here, where you don't have just unlimited phone calls that you can make and receive. You do have to pay for like minutes or something like that. And then it looks like we can also take payments through this. Be interesting to see if there's a way to like link this with another payment source, because what I'm not seeing, I'm seeing reporting here, but then like how does the payment actually come through? You can create invoices, you can create products, you can create coupons. So this is a lot like using Stripe, I guess. But again, like this kind of like adds some of those questions about security. So I'm not saying that they don't have good security, but this is kind of a newer platform. It's only been around, I think, for a couple of years. And so whether or not you're comfortable having all your banking information tied through this, whether your customers are going to be comfortable having it come through here, that's another question, right? I don't know if this is something that can be tied through PayPal or Stripe or Venmo, so that there's that more well-established and trusted option of payment. That could potentially cause an issue for you if a customer goes to purchase something from your site and they don't recognize the way that you're taking payment. It might make them uncomfortable. Okay, and we've also got settings. This is where our integrations are. Oh, okay, here we go. Answers that question. So it looks like we can connect through Stripe or PayPal. And there's plenty of other integrations in here as well. It sort of looks like these ones are already added in because you can add new ones, but these are the ones that seem to be standard. So we've got email as well, phone, SMS if you're someone that uses text marketing, and then tracking. Okay, this is based on Facebook ads, it looks like. Okay, I mean, not a huge range of integration options. Let's see what happens when we click on new integration here. So, oh, okay, so you're limited to these types of things. So like, for example, if you're like me and you already have all your email set up in another system, it doesn't appear that you could link it in here. So you would have to, I guess, start all over. See, that to me is not ideal. So if you're coming into this brand new, you're just starting your business, you haven't set up any other tools, this could be useful because you don't have anything else that you would need to migrate in. You could just start from scratch. But if you do already have some of these tools set up, it sort of seems like you'd kind of be starting over with a lot of this, potentially being able to import things, I guess, but just keep that in mind. I think one of the things that happens a lot in the world of online tools for businesses is that we tend to think that, well, a couple of things. We think that the grass is always greener. So whatever tool that shiny object tool that we've just found out about has to be cooler and better than the one that we're in. And well, that's just not true. I mean, sometimes it is cool and sometimes it is better, but it's not a given. And in a lot of cases, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. The reality is that no tool is going to be perfect. No tool is going to be do all of the things that you want and be exactly what you're looking for. You know, you're going to have to play around with and have a learning curve with any tool that you jump into. So it's just something to keep in mind. Something that's important to recognize is that just because you hear about something new doesn't necessarily make it better than what you're using. I'm also not sure if they're, what kind of deals they're offering right now. So we can look into that as well, into their pricing. And then we'll come back in and look at some of these. Obviously, we can't look into setting up everything in here, but we'll look into seeing what it looks like to set up a website and to set up an automation. Okay, so let's look at their pricing model. So one of the things that I mentioned in their previous pricing model was that they had this thing called, they had this aspect where they were charging you based off of a number of how many records you have. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to tools like this, there's always going to be some aspect of the more you use it, the more you're paying for, right? So if you're in an email marketing platform, for example, and you start getting more and more people on your list, more contacts, basically, then you're going to pay more, right? It's kind of that same concept of they're assuming that as your business is growing, their cut should grow. So that's normal. What they had done with Flowtrack early on, they had this lifetime deal that they were offering at the time, but it didn't come with unlimited records. And what I learned as I was digging a little deeper into it is it's really important to dig deeper, because you might think that records means a certain thing, but then you find out it means something different. So for example, most of these platforms are based off your number of contacts, but with Flowtrack at the time, it was based off of what they were calling records, which included contacts, emails that you created and sent out, automations, I can't remember what all else, like forms, all that stuff. Everything was considered a record. So when you started to think about it that way, the idea that you would max out the number of included records quickly was a little bit concerning, right? So one of the things that Mike Brown let me know in the email is that they heard those of us that were calling that out, talking about it. They realized that, hey, that's not really the best way to go about this. And so they removed that from their pricing. So they no longer do that. Even if people had already signed up, that got taken away. So that's cool. Good for them. I think that's super awesome that they listened to that and they realized, like, hey, that's totally hidden fees. And you can see right here that they're definitely attempting to really get to a place where their pricing is a lot more transparent and that you know what you're paying for. So that's key. So we've got a couple of options here. We've got this Flowtrack Solo, which is $29 a month. And it includes all of the services that they offer. So that's cool. You've got one user, which is you, the administrator. You can create 2 websites and funnels with unlimited pages. So that's pretty cool. I mean, most people don't need more than 2 if they're just their own business. And then 5,000 CRM contacts. That's pretty decent for the basic plan. But you can see that we jump up pretty quickly here the second that you have any additional people that you want to give access to and have working with you. So whether you're working with a VA or anything like that, which I realize that most of us are solopreneurs. That's why we're here. And so then this isn't really a huge deal. But that price jumps up pretty fast, right? There's also the fact that you can add 8 more websites and funnels, it looks like. So that's pretty cool. And like massively jumps up how many contacts you can have. And then of course, because you have more logins, you have role-based access control, things like that. So that's pretty cool. And then they're unlimited. That's actually pretty good when you're looking at the fact that we've just gone from limitations to no limitations, and they've only added $20 a month. That's pretty good. But you can see here that there is still additional costs that come along with that. And granted, they're being upfront about it, so that's great. But if you're using their phone services, there are additional fees. If you're using their email services, using their built-in email service, then there's additional fees there. Again, it's negligible. It's very, very small. But when you think about it and you think about the fact that you could potentially have, 100,000 contacts that you're sending emails to, this is still going to add up. So it's something to keep in mind as you're looking at something like this, to make sure that as you're growing, you don't end up having a bunch of random extra fees that you don't want to have. And then we're looking down here, we're seeing how they're comparing what you would pay compared to if you had all of these things individually. Now, they're not necessarily wrong about this, right? Like, these are a lot of the tools that people need in order to run a business. But there are also a lot of completely free options for a lot of these tools, especially when it comes to like website builders. If you're someone who's using WordPress, or, actually there's quite a few options depending on how complicated your website is that you can do for free. But then again, if you wanted to have a custom domain, then you would have to upgrade anyway. So fair point on that one. Plenty of places you can do forms completely for free. There are definitely options for scheduling for appointments and things like that you can use for free. There are ways to do payments that charge you per transaction versus a monthly. So there's just a lot of things to think about, that they're not wrong in that these services can have these costs, but they don't have to, right? And so this is where you want to make sure that you don't get sucked into just the numbers that they're throwing in front of you. That's not a given. They've definitely listened and paid attention to what we had to say before, and they're definitely making some positive changes. So that's great. Why don't we dive back into the builder itself and see how easy it is to use? Okay, let's start with the websites, because I'm really curious to see how this works. Okay, so we are in their web designer. It's looking pretty standard so far. Thinking it's going to be kind of a drag and drop situation, which is great. I like that we can see it in multiple different screen sizes, so that you can make sure that everything that you're doing is going to look the way you intend it to look in that environment. I'm curious to see if we're able to edit in one view and it won't affect other views, because that's one thing that a lot of these designers, it's a feature that they don't have, which is basically to let you be able to edit how it looks on mobile without affecting how it's going to look on a desktop. Let's see if it lets us do that. So I'm just going to go back into the mobile view really quick and delete something and see what happens when I come back into the regular view. So we've got sizes, move, transform. Wow, there's a lot in here. Okay, so let's hit delete and see if it's still there when we go back to desktop view. No, it's gone. Okay, so that is telling me out of the gate, it feels like the way that their editor works, it's going to impact everything when you make a change on any of the views. So that's good to know. Not necessarily a bad thing. That's pretty standard, but it is always kind of nice when you have the ability to remove something just from that view. That's kind of cool. Okay, so let's see. We've got global styles. So this is like your branding. This is where you would put in your branding hex codes and choose your fonts and things like that. I'm wondering if you can import your own or if you're stuck with the ones they have. It's looking like you're stuck with the ones they have, but that's relatively standard. But then you've got this one with your colors where they have lots and lots of color options, but if you have your own unique hex codes, I wonder if you can bring them in. I'm not really seeing a way to do that. Okay, so yeah, so it's not seeming like you really can just bring in your own hex codes, but they do have quite a lot of options here. So there's a pretty good chance that you can find something that's close to your own branding already. To me, it would matter a lot that I actually have my own branding colors because I've spent a lot of time making that recognizable to people. So that's kind of not an awesome thing for me. But again, I've only been in here for a few minutes, so it's possible that I just am not finding it. Let's see if we can change it here. We could, okay, so we could put it here. So that's great. So it looks like you actually could go ahead and put your own hex code in here. I'm not seeing how you would be able to set up your own like palette, which would be ideal, but you can at least change it, it seems like. So that's good. I gotta be honest, this is feeling complicated. So I'm somebody who's pretty good at picking this stuff up, but it sort of feels like there's a lot of terminology and settings that would not be comfortable or familiar to somebody who doesn't consider themselves tech savvy or somebody who's coming into this kind of thing for the first time. So kind of not giving me vibes of being great for new users. And I feel like if it were me, I could see that you'd get frustrated really quickly. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Okay, so let's take a look at their automations because these are the two things that I feel like would be the first ones that most people would be using is creating a website and setting up automations. So let's give that a shot. Let's look at one of theirs that they already have just so we get a feel for what it looks like. So a sign up flow, this is pretty standard. This is something where you would put a form on your website and have people use it to sign up for your email list or something like that. So let's take a look at how that looks. So start is going to be your trigger here. So this would be like the form itself. Then you've got the ability to tag your contact, which is always handy. I use tags a lot in my business. You've got a contact in here. We've got the ability to send an email. This is what happens after they submit the form. This redirects them to a particular page on your website, typically, and then deactivating them from the flow. So this looks pretty straightforward. So what you're doing is you're adding a tag and you should be able to just call it whatever you want, right? So they've got one called sign up, but we could also add opt-in or whatever that might be. So that looks pretty straightforward. So we're adding a tag to this contact. So let's look at send an email. So let's click edit email and see what that looks like. As this is another thing that you would spend a lot of time in is their email building interface, which actually looks better than the website one. This looks a little bit more standard where you've just got your header, you've got the body of your email, you can add a button, that's pretty cool, and then you've got your socials. So that one I think is pretty straightforward. This looks better than how their website interface looks. This looks much cleaner, much easier. Redirecting the visitor, so this is taking them, like I said, to a specific page. That's pretty cool. Okay, so this is basically just like removes it ends the flow. So basically they start the flow here, they fill out the form, they go through all of these things, and then they're no longer in this flow. I mean, kind of a redundancy, but works fine. Okay, so let's say we had a second email that we wanted to send them after all of this. So we've got follow-up email. Let's see. Sender email comes from, let's see what our choices are. Got that. And that seems standard. Okay, so then we'll just hit save right now. I need to set the contents. Okay. Okay, so then it looks like in order to add this into our workflow, we have to create some space for it. And then that's pretty simple, actually. So we just drop that in there. So, okay, so let's say this is the customer journey we want to have. So they sign up for the form and they get the initial email, they're redirected to this website. And then let's say the next day you want to follow up with them. So we've just created that follow-up email in theory, right? And then let's go ahead and add in the logic of waiting until the next day. Let's see how, I mean, this is looking pretty straightforward. So I'm liking this. I am going to make a little more room here because this is kind of messy. So yeah, so what we've just created here is that the next day they'll get a follow-up email. I do like this. I think that this is pretty user-friendly. Yeah, I think it's good. So here's the thing, guys. Flowtrack is listening. They're making some really good changes. I think that's great. Couple of things that we noticed would be that the website designer was a little bit overcomplicated. So if you're new at this sort of thing and this is or it's just not something that's your forte, I think you might be a little overwhelmed by it. This is also one of those situations where this is intended to be like 14 different apps into one app. If you're not using those 14 different apps now, this isn't saving you any money. I'm not going to say I don't recommend it because I think as a tool, I think it seems to be fairly functional. It does what it says it does. And for people who are more experienced in these tools, I think that it's relatively user-friendly. But as a solopreneur, it's a bit more than you need. I think that it's probably a little bit too overwhelming, and I would probably pass on it for now and, maybe put a pin in it to come back to it later. I'm personally not a big fan of having all of my tools reliant on one particular platform. So this is your email marketing, your website, your project management, your contacts, your everything, right? And that's exactly what they're intending to be. But I kind of always think of it from the perspective of, like, what happens if their server goes down? Or what happens if the company doesn't survive and now you're left with nothing, right? So I'm not saying that you need to approach these things with the perspective of the worst case scenario, but it is important to think about that. And I always think about the times when things like Facebook or Instagram, when the servers go down or something's going on and you can't access it, and the people whose entire businesses run from those platforms, it's kind of a freak out moment, right? Because you can't communicate with your customers. You can't be productive in any way. And I feel like this is kind of dangerously close to a similar type of thing, only even more so because every aspect of how you run your business is in this one platform. So that's just my personal opinion. But I do think that Flowtrack is making a lot of really good changes. And I think it's, if you're at a point where your business has grown to the level where you are using all of these tools, it's definitely something that's worth looking into. And you know what? Grab your own free trial. So I will throw the free trial link down in the description so you can try it out for yourself. And if you decide to use it, I would love to hear about it. So make sure that you're commenting below like, hey, I grabbed the free trial, or I use Flowtrack, or whatever it might be. Tell me if there's something that I didn't see out of the gate that is, better or easier than it's seeming to me at first glance. Okay. So if you liked this video, make sure you click that like button and you subscribe and ring that little notification bell so that you never miss the next video. The online tools for your business do not need to be complicated and overwhelming. It's time to let it be easy.